So fundraising and finances, essentially funding a chapter is two sides of the same coin. You can either raise money, either through traditional fundraisers, or another way is asking alumni for donations, asking around in your college. Sometimes your dean can provide funding for the College of Engineering, or the student government can provide funding. You can also gain money through initiation fees, making them a little bit more expensive than what the cost is to headquarters. And you can also get TBP grants, more on that later. Another option is reducing costs. You have to remember that your events don't have to be super, super extravagant for them to be valuable to your members. So oftentimes you can find cheaper options that work for the same type of event. And you can also try to figure out ways to collaborate with other orgs or other chapters to help fund events so that you can reduce the costs between different groups of people collaborating to run them. And you can also set fees for people to attend, though most of the time the other options work out a little bit better. But yeah, there's two sides. So it doesn't always have to be that you're supposed to be raising money. You don't always need to fundraise. You can also reduce costs as a way to gain that money to use on events for your chapter. So speaking of fundraising, here's some popular ideas that we've collected from past chapters, what they've told us. One group used to do a concession stand. So they would sell food items at sporting events. So they'd partner oftentimes with their own, wherever the stadium was that their school played, they would go there and then they would ask to do fundraising through that. Another few chapters have also told us that they usually have a TBP store. So if you have sort of a room on campus that's dedicated for Tabita Pi, this is also an option. You can sell things out of that campus room, for lack of a better phrase, and then gain money through that. Chapters like mine, so I actually initiated at California Xi, which is San Diego State University in Southern California. We actually got company donations, so you can ask alumni to ask their company if they'd be willing to donate to your org. So us, for example, we've gotten donations from Northrop Grumman before, so that also helps in that regard. Another option is restaurant fundraising. A lot of orgs on campus, probably you've seen, they've also do this where they'll go to a restaurant and they'll say, like, we want, if they'll stand outside, they'll hand out flyers and say, if you take this to the register, then we get a percentage of the proceedings. So that's another option. Again, if you're looking at the other side of the coin, low cost events is a great way to not have to fundraise and still manage running your chapter and providing value to your members. So community service is most often completely free. You don't have to pay anything to go do that. So volunteering at a local food pantry, doing online volunteering, tutoring, these are all great ways to run an event, have meaning for your members for coming there, and still run your chapter without having to pay too much on your side. Socials that are easy to run, like a movie night or a game night where the members will bring their own things, is a great way to have a free, low-cost event. Professional development, where you ask speakers to come in and volunteer their time, kind of like what we're doing right now, is great. And also image boosting activities that could be low cost are free coffee, doing like a club fair, having a strong social media presence, doing orientations, going to freshman classes, advertising in that regard is always a great idea as well, and is something that doesn't require a lot of money on hand for you to perform. So we have some upfront resources. These links will be provided in the video after the fact too, but also they're here for you to use, and we'll provide them to you in an email following up later. I'd like to point out one in particular that I really liked, and it's the grants link. That's really cool. I didn't know that TBP did grants, but they do. So definitely take advantage of that. It's a great resource.
So at RIT, the bulk of our money came from doing a pizza sale with the engineering college. Essentially, the engineering college in the atrium had a place to do a pizza sale. They scheduled somebody for every day of the week, and at the beginning, each club within the area would get a couple of days for the quarter, and that way we'd staff that, and that was where the bulk of our funding came from.
And I'm from New Mexico Gamma, which is a chapter out in very rural Socorro, New Mexico, out in the middle of nowhere. And so it was always very difficult to find fundraising ideas that would work for us. But one that worked really well actually was dog wash. So similar to a car wash, but for dogs. And basically there was an athletic field on our campus that we would get access to. And we would just, have to buy like some shampoo, something to scrub the dog, some towels. And we would just use water from like a nearby swimming pool, not from the swimming pool directly, got it from their facilities. And to make it really successful, what we would do is we would do it on a Saturday, and earlier that morning there would be a farmer's market in town, and we would go and advertise to there, and we'd get a bunch of local townies, and we would set it so that there's no set price, they can pay whatever they want. And so a lot of them would chip in like 20, 25 bucks or something like that as like a thank you, and kind of like to support our chapter. And that was pretty successful for the size of chapter that we were.
I've been affiliated, as Kavya said, with 2 chapters that are not rural, but urban, in DC Gamma in Washington, DC, and Columbia University in New York City. And I'll speak to one of the events that I helped organize as an advisor for Columbia recently in the past 3 years or so. We just bought cookies from Insomnia Cookies, something similar in your area. And we parked ourselves in an area where a lot of students were traveling through just to promote Tau Beta Pi, get the image, boost our image, get the word out, have other engineering students and non-engineering students ask about why we were selling cookies. And that seemed to work pretty well.
So at Michigan Epsilon, one of the big things we did when I was there and kind of before I had my time, Michigan allows this. We did poker fundraisers. So we actually worked with local, I'm not sure exactly the name, poker halls, and we would run the thing for them, and they would give us a portion of the proceedings. And also you get some tips while you're working it. Another one that we came up with on site that may be more accessible to some people is Pi Professor. That one we did my junior and senior year when I was at Wayne State. And that was a very fun event that people had a good time, charge $5 a pie or something, or add toppings, and that's a great way to fundraise. And we also had a Tau Beta Pi store, which was always a good cash flowing thing for us.
And say that for us, again, for both chapters I've been affiliated with, I guess speaking to when I was chapter president, initiation fee, the difference between what we charged and what headquarters took, and it was a fairly sizable difference back then. I don't remember what the initiation fee was then, what headquarters took, but that kept us going for a few years, because if we did low cost events over time, projecting 3 or 5 years out, you just build up a sum of money that you could keep in the bank and basically save for your chapter down the line.
For New Mexico Gamma, again, the rural school, that we were much the same way as Scott's, where our initiation fee was $100, and the amount that we had to send to headquarters was like 50 or 55. And so we pocketed quite a bit of money. And then most of the events that we ran were really cheap. So we were just able to build that up over time. And we just put all our focus into, having good events that were low cost, but also heavy recruitment, so that you get as many initiation fees as possible. And then you can make a good amount of money for that. And then I've also been involved as an advisor for New Mexico Beta, which is at the University of New Mexico in Albuquerque, a much more urban setting. But there we've been able to do a lot more, like gain a lot more money simply by asking for it. So we send out emails to alumni asking for alumni in the Albuquerque area, asking for donations to support our causes, or maybe to support a specific event. We ask the dean for money. We ask the engineering department chairs for money. We ask the student government for money. And in my opinion, asking for money is like the lowest effort fundraiser that you have to put in, and it can also be the most successful. So highly recommend finding different avenues for raising money for your chapter.
Our biggest image-related fundraiser or image-related event was a barbecue that we do for the College of Engineering, And because that was a service to the College of Engineering, the Dean of Engineering gave us a lot of money to do it. So, that was a big help to us. It also helped that he was a member. So if your dean's not a member of Tau Beta Pi, initiate them. And then our initiation fees were high enough to cover, like the initiation related events. So specifically the dinner after initiation. But, so essentially that money, and then there was some left over to do other events as well.
Yeah, I'm going to quickly echo and add to that. I cannot state this more, like, it's so important. You don't have to use a ton of money to provide meaningful, valuable events to your members. You don't have to make them super extravagant. You don't have to host a giant ball. You don't have to do that. Most of the stuff that you can do can be done on in a very budgeted sense. Like we do that where I'm an advisor for California Xi. We also we pull from initiation fees and then we budget that amount, that cost. And so we say, okay, well, this percentage of that will go towards these events. This percentage will go towards buying vents for vent polishing. And we budget our costs that way. But then any additional money that we get from company donations or from the school or whatever is literally just that, it's extra. And so budgeting is a great way to do it, and looking for cheaper ways to do things is not a terrible thing. You can provide very meaningful, very valuable events to your members and candidates if you just get creative.
At New Mexico Beta, one of the big ways that we saved money was for the initiation banquet. Previously, we had done mostly catering events, and for our initiation size, we would probably have around 40 attendees for our banquet. And it would cost us around $400, sometimes more, sometimes a little less. And we cut that dramatically. It now costs only about $100 each time we do it. And the way we did it is, instead of catering, we had all the officers put together a burrito bowl, basically, like not a burrito bowl, but like a bar, where like one officer would make beans, one officer would make rice, one officer would buy tortillas, one officer would cook some chicken, one would make the vegetables, and so on and so forth. And we would just have all the different parts out on a table, and it worked really well because, like, if you're vegetarian, you just skip the meats. If you're gluten-free, the tortillas, I believe, were gluten-free, or at least we had that option. So it worked for basically any diet. And because we're just buying raw ingredients rather than cooked goods, I think the highest it ever cost us was $115. Normally it would be $75 in total. So super cheap way to feed a lot of people. And we actually got a lot of compliments for it.
For our job body meetings, generally we'd have the early ones, we just have a pizza, which is not super expensive. But at the last one, where we kind of pick our officers for the next go around next semester, we would do a potluck there as well. We'd buy the main dish, sure, and then and we change it up, make it really fun. But then people would bring something they'd love to bring, and that always was the most favorite one. Also the longest meeting, but the most favorite because you were pretty happy and full afterwards. And on top of that, our location, we're in Detroit, so we are pretty much, there's a lot of free things you can do there. Going out downtown, campus marches where you can go ice skating, and we'd have little things basically to kind of get to know the city better, and cheap events which are free to most people. We'd also partner with other orgs. We're trying to reduce costs for events. So sometimes they do some college luncheon. We host that ourselves some years, and some years we'd partner with a neighboring room. So a neighboring, whether it's SWE or somebody else, we would get them involved and share the costs and share the publicity too, because it's a win-win for both orgs at that point.
The free events happen to be mostly our service related events. And so we had developed relationships with two different organizations. One did a fundraiser in the winter that was really kind of fun because we got to get dressed up and go help them with this charitable auction, which had, a silent auction part where you'd help people who perhaps had already been drinking a little bit, understand the right way to use the form. But then also, there was a live auction portion too that we took part in, helping bids, and then at the end of the night working on packing people's items up and things like that, right? So that was always fun. And then the other one was we'd have in the springtime or in the kind of the late spring, we'd do some work with an animal shelter, an animal farm near the school, and that was a good event too. And you kind of sign up for a couple hours there, but it was an interesting way to get off campus, number one, do some good, number two, and then just be with other people in Tau Beta Pi. So that's pretty solid.
For our post-initiation gathering, we would have food, and we would usually do something along the lines of dig in, something where you can, I think echoing like what Alan was saying, where you can have cater to a diverse set of palates and cuisines and people's dietary needs and stuff, and buy a lot of food in bulk, sort of like a Costco approach. Buy food in bulk and have it for the long run. You could have it for, I don't know, we had food, people taking home food and using it for other meetings and feeding themselves, and it's a good time.
I think one that I just want to throw out there, especially in the time of COVID, is you have the amazing resource of doing something called online events, which are free. So please take that to your advantage. There's lots of things that you can do online, lots of games you can play online, hosting like game nights, inviting panelists for speaking has never been easier. You could be all the way across the country and still show up, and it's great. So definitely take advantage of the fact that you might that you now have this hybrid sort of opportunity that you can take, make the most out of and do the best with.
I've heard of a couple of different possibilities, right? One is if you can work with other groups within your school, other organizations, then you can kind of put on an event maybe adjacent to your career fair, and sort of build that up as an event, and then have that, because essentially you can offer Tau Beta Pi as a benefit to employers. They're then more interested to give money or, start doing events more specifically with Tau Beta Pi or with you in the other organizations. Alternately, if you are interested in reaching out to local area alumni, that may work for said company, then you can kind of create a relationship that way. And if you don't have any contacts with alumni, Trisha, the director of alumni affairs, you can contact her and she'd be more than happy to set you up with local alumni. So I think those are two ways to really get started. My guess is it's probably not one event and then they'll give you, funding. It's probably building a relationship over some amount of time.
Having done that sort of for our chapter before, it was definitely, we had the help of an alumni in the area that was local to us. And so he went and spoke with the company, but they in return wanted us to do this presentation thing. So they show us what your org is about and all this stuff. So we sort of had to give them put on a show what we're capable of and what we can offer them. And sort of present to them that way in order to gain that funding. So that's something that we encountered. Obviously, it's different based on different companies.
So combine the alumni and the company thing. We did have one alumni who was a very big giver, I'd say, a donator to our chapter. But one thing that we got him to commit to giving us money was we gave him kind of a plan. So if you do have a passionate alumni that about that is able to donate, definitely sitting down them and understanding from their perspective what they're looking to get out of your organization. We made a 1-year plan, a 5-year roadmap, I think, and we really sat down every semester, looked at ourselves, and every year we'd take them out to dinner and basically ask them how we're doing. So that's kind of a relationship we built with an existing alumni that I kept continuing. But that's also ways you can get alumni that are able to give back in that way to be committed and showing that you're taking their word and their advice to run your chapter.
Just like he said, I think a big thing is if you can have some kind of structured thing that you can show companies that's first of all, should give some background on your chapter. Second of all, should say here's the different ways that you can contribute. And maybe it's $100 if you give us this, we do this thing, and we put your name, we associate your name in some way. Having some kind of structured package like that can be really helpful, and it'll show that you're very prepared and that you're very professional, and it'll look really good to a company, and it'll help a lot.
You pick your events that you're going to do, especially Tau Beta Pi. We pick the events for the next semester, halfway through that semester. You budget out based off what you've done historically or what you can find online if it's a new event, and stick to your budget. You write down what you basically keep. You'd have a treasurer keeping track of what you spent for, what you bought, keep your receipts, or at least track them in an Excel sheet or some way, and just really be a bookkeeper, a simple bookkeeper for it. And then plan for the next semester before that semester happens, because it gets busy and fast pretty quickly there.
We know what events we typically do in the fall semester prior to initiation. And we always do fundraisers after initiation so that we have the maximum number of members to help with it. But so we knew like roughly what the cost was going to be up until the point at which we could do the next fundraiser. And we'd always make sure we had at least that much money on hand so that you could at least get to that next fundraiser.
At Columbia University, they transition officers over in the middle of the year. So early spring semester, you have the new crop of officers coming in. That's a good time for the old treasurer, the incumbent one, to get in touch with whoever's going to take the treasurer position from then on and talk about what the finances were in the past year and what funds are allocated for the next year. So that's a good time to have that conversation. And that also goes along with what Nazir was saying about bookkeeping and keeping transitional documents and accountability on finances and fundraising.
So in the online era, this is a new invention we had to make for, starting this past year. We wanted something interactive to do during the initiation banquet, because normally we would have food, but during the COVID era, we would just have it in a Zoom meeting. And so what we would do, we created what we called Tau Beta puzzles, and we just got really creative with them and started thinking of different ways that we could ask them bizarre questions that they've never been asked before. So we would split them up into groups. They'd like introduce themselves, do quick icebreakers, come up with the group name, and then we'd come up with just different kinds of challenges that we could put them through. So one example, we did audio clips where, let me see, like this one would have been an audio clip from a engineering lecture in a different language, and they'd have to guess what language it was and what lecture it was from. And so there would usually be a little clue. So even if you didn't know the language, you might pick up on a word that you'd be like, oh, that sounded like, Navi or Stokes or something, So that was like one section we'd do, is like a bunch of audio ones. We'd also do like, here's 3 things and one of them isn't real, but the other 2 are. And it would always be like really bizarre, like units of measurement. Here's a decicup, a metric ounce, and a cubic ton. And one of these is fake and the other 2 are real. And so we just like make it really like comical and make sure that they were going to have a lot of fun with it. And then we'd also add in like a trivia that would either be about our school or about Tau Beta Pi or about engineering in general or something like that. And we would put them through this right after our initiation ceremony. And it has been by far our like favorite social event to do. We're going to find a way to transition this into an in-person event as well. Maybe it'll feel a little bit like a bar trivia game or something like that. But it's been a lot of fun, and it's completely free to make. It just requires a lot of creativity on your part and some time on a weekend.
Tutoring is a good way to promote some of the merits of Tau Beta Pi. Being top of your class and helping underclassmen, maybe doing some member recruitment in that vein, but that's usually something that you can offer as an event, and would be no to low cost, and subjects you guys are familiar with. That's always good social time too.
If you are in an area that has some things going on, there's always events. Bar trivia at an actual bar. we've done that before. So I laughed when you said that because that's a way cooler version and way more pertinent to engineering version to that. But yeah, just checking out what's going on campus and maybe getting a group to go, and it's always fun too. If it's just a smaller event, doesn't have to be hosted fully by yourself. You could find things and bring a group of people and still get to know people better there.
So some take-home messages. Make sure that you weigh whether your efforts should be focused on fundraising or just in general making your cost of events lower. Sometimes, like I've said a gazillion times by now, I'm sure I'm sounding like a broken record, your best activities and events can be super cost effective. You don't have to spend a whole lot to get to be able to provide value to your members. Get creative. Alan has mentioned this before. And so have others in our presentation group. It's always great when you can come up with really cool ideas to put something together that you don't really need a lot of money for. And I know all of y'all are capable of it. You're engineers after all. Also, a great point to mention is make sure you reach out and work with other engineering orgs. They're a great resource for fundraising and just for throwing events. So this will help definitely lower the cost of your event cost, but also allow you to work with people and sort of get to know others outside of just your TBP bubble at your college. And then finally, reach out within your school's engineering student board, to the dean, to the department chairs, see if they can provide funding. Asking for money is not a bad thing. And it's definitely, like Alan said, one of the easier ways to get funding to do whatever you want to do for your members and candidates. Quick thing to note, our next webinar will be, it's November 10th, the second Wednesday of every month is when we usually do this, 8 p.m. Eastern, just like usual. It's on keeping members active, which will definitely be a really interesting topic. And we have an interesting group of speakers lined up for all of y'all. So make sure you register here. Also, point of note, interactive chapter exchange or ICE sessions will start online next week as part of non-vention is what we're calling it, I suppose. So the online workshops are going to be Tuesday through Thursday at 6 p.m. or 8 p.m. Eastern time. And it's a great way for you to get together and learn from other chapters, get new ideas, get creative. We'll work on chapter improvement plans after the fact, and then follow up with everybody in the spring regarding those. This is normally done at conventions, but since convention is canceled this year, we are still hosting these virtually so that you guys can get as much out of it as possible, because we know that these are always a hit and people always enjoy them. So definitely make sure, plan on being there. We'd love to see you all.